Have you all heard of that one famous quote that everyone never finishes? The one by Apuleius that goes, "Familiarity breeds contempt." Well, the actual full quote is, "Familiarity breeds contempt while rarity wins admiration." And that's a quote that's become more relevant and poignant as the years go by. Retro gamers are enamored by the concept of rarity, whether the item in question is of quality or not. Just because something is scarce doesn't mean it should be worth tons of money. Like, take those sealed copies of Super Mario Bros. On the NES. Should these really be worth more than my 2012 Honda Accord? Well, I'd stand to reason that they really shouldn't be. But you know what they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and unfortunately, a lot of people are pretty darn near blind. Yet in spite of my strong feelings towards feeling the scarcity market, I myself can fall prey to the allure of finding something not many else own, which brings us to today's subject. The Z Pocket Game Handheld is quite the special little device. I hold in my hands a piece of DIY handheld history. This unit is so rare that when it popped up for sale on eBay US, I just had to spring to purchase it. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was like seeing the literal holy grail up for auction, yet no one caring or understanding what they were looking at. Though, should they have cared? Low quantity handhelds are a dime a dozen. What makes this guy so unique? Well, to find out, we need to take a trip back to the distant year of 2014. Ooh! It was a turning point for both handheld gaming and mobile technology as a whole. Sony's Vita was struggling against a rapidly growing mobile game market, which was now dominated by touchscreens rather than physical buttons. Even the handheld powerhouse Nintendo had their own sales struggles with the 3DS. And it seemed clear to analysts and speculators that the traditional handhelds were on their way out. And while in retrospect, it's easy to point out how wrong everybody was, you have to keep this period of time in perspective. Smartphones were evolving at a rapid pace. Processors like Qualcomm's Snapdragon 810 were pushing the boundaries of what mobile chips could do. They weren't just gimped platforms for making calls and checking emails. If developers truly wanted to take advantage of what was possible, they could have made a legitimate threat to bespoke machines. The Xperia Z series was Sony's attempt to carve a place in this market. Devices built with a certain level of class and sophistication, beautiful designs, cutting-edge mobile silicon, and all equipped with high-end cameras for the time. But while Samsung and Apple soared, Xperia phones remained niche, underappreciated, and ultimately forgotten. Most people saw them as obsolete phones, a weird deviation from the PlayStation people. But for one man, these discarded beauties were the perfect foundation for something new. Enter Lao Zhang, an enterprising individual who sought to reinvigorate the low-end handheld market. He set out to fix the things we complain about today, like low-quality materials, garbage OS experience, and poorly tuned performance. And he did it at a time where just getting a half-decent retro handheld was an ordeal. The unit is based on 2014 tech, debuted in 2020, yet still feels leagues better than devices that just released this year. This is a masterclass of how to do more with less, and we're going to thoroughly study this handheld anomaly, starting with its basic rundown. You're looking at a handheld being powered by the Snapdragon 800, a 4-core CPU based on the Crate 400 design. You've also got an Adreno 330 GPU to bring up the rear with graphics muscle. The display is a 4.3-inch 1280 by 720 IPS panel, and one that was a standout in its day. Such great pixel density and clarity at a PPI of 342. The unit comes with 16 GB of internal flash storage and 2 GB of RAM. Now it may seem like a paltry amount, but it's enough for the stock OS. It's all been optimized with only gaming in mind, so it works much better than the paper specs would lead you to believe. For physical ports, you get a micro USB port, a micro SD card slot, a headphone jack, and an OTG switch for the onboard Vita controls. This is all backed up by a 3,300 mAh battery, which can give you about approximately 5 to 6 hours of playtime, depending on the workload. All in all, great hardware on tap, especially considering that this tech is from 2014. You're looking at the remains of an upcycled Sony Xperia Z1 Compact, an interesting choice as a platform. But later on in the video, we're going to see exactly why that was the correct one. For now, I'd like to turn your attention to the presentation of the unit. Simply put, in my opinion, it's really good, near fantastic. Mr. Zhang truly went for a timeless design, something striking, a look that immediately draws your eyes to it and has them lusting in wonder. This is a beautiful console, and it's a shame that this sort of alluring design is a bit of a lost art nowadays. I have problems with Neo as a company, but man, do they know how to make an attractive looking device. In fact, the ZPG reminds me a lot of an early INEO device, something pre-2022. Very clean lines, careful symmetry, and some small but personalized flares across the unit. Though, the physical aesthetics are not the most exciting part of the presentation. That honor would fall to the stock OS. For those who saw my Jelly Mini E5 review, you may recall me saying that someone on the team really cared about the presentation of the OS. Well, that goes double for the ZPG. From the moment you turn it on, you're presented with a very high quality boot video, showing off all of the consoles you can expect to experience in a very nice and engaging manner. Now, it's no original Xbox opening vid, but for a retro handheld, it has no competition. And unless I'm mistaken, I don't think any unit currently does something like this. And I'm sure if they did, it'd be a giant marketing feature somewhere. And the point isn't to be amazed that there's a startup video. The point is to highlight the level of care that went into the first impression. They could have just used a stock Android ROM, but they didn't. In fact, the ZPG is using a heavily customized Android ROM with the ATV launcher built on top as the front end. You get these clean app tiles and a fully navigable interface with the controls. That may come across as a bit of an obvious observation. Like, oh wow, the handheld with bespoke controls allows you to control the interface with said controls. How novel. But you'd be surprised. Getting Android 5.1 to be fully navigable with only a gamepad was not as easy as it is today. A lot of under the hood work had to be done to the ROM to make sure it played nicely with all the internal menus. Remember that there weren't nearly as many Android handhelds and gaming devices as there are now. Someone had to blaze the trail, and the ZPG handles it with a level of ease that makes the end user experience feel effortless. If I had to levy a complaint, it'd be that the entire interface is in Chinese and can't be changed. Now you can change the keyboard language and the settings language, but nothing else. Though, to be fair, this device was never meant to leave China. Like I said, I hold something special in my hands, which is an excellent segue into my next point. How comfortable could it be to hold a handheld designed by one man? Well, it's very comfortable to hold, almost surprisingly so. The device is only 6.5 inches in length and 2 in width. It weighs 200 grams, which really contributes to the overall comfort. You don't get sculpted grips or ergo curves, but the balanced weight makes it sort of melt into the hands. And by balanced weight, I mean that uniformly. A lot of devices will move the bulk of the weight to the middle and leave the ends of the device with not much in the ways of heft, making the center heavier than the ends where your hands need to grip the device, which is certainly a design choice. For a candy bar device in this size class, it's one of the best I've ever held, and I genuinely mean that. Let's remember that all small candy bar devices are not created equal. Everyone is different, but the mark of a good handheld, regardless of size, should be how easy it is to access all critical inputs. Retro devices can really struggle with this, as most let you emulate a myriad of different systems that all have their own weird and wacky control schemes. I ascribe to the handheld school of thought that says don't add inputs to devices that don't need them. If you're setting out to build a handheld that has GBA performance as the main attraction in mind, then why add 2 analog sticks? It's usually a waste and unnecessary. It also asks how comfortable a device feels to hold when there's a mismatch of expectations, especially if the chipset doesn't allow for that level of performance. Don't give me a Unisoc T618 and then try to build a PS2 marquee device around that. You're priming the consumers for disappointment. However, Lao Zhang understood that philosophy very much. In an interview with Taki Udon, he had this to say: I decided not to include a second analog stick because most of the games people will play on this device, PSP, retro consoles, and Android games, don't require it. Adding a second stick would make the design more complex, take up more space, and increase costs without significant benefits. Such a reassuring quote. This is how you build. There's no need to send mixed signals and quiet promises when you can tailor the device to a specific purpose, which leads nicely into a discussion about performance. And boy, is there much to discuss. You have to remember that this device is running Android 5.1 and hardware from 2014, yet the gaming performance of each emulator is good? Okay, I'm running out of superlatives here, but bear with me. Zhang treated each emulator as if that platform was the headlining feature. He only added emulators that the hardware could run at a reasonable speed, and not only that, but he tuned each one too. The device arrives already in spec for just playing games. I didn't have to fiddle much with settings, yet I could if I wanted to. Gotta love user choice. Simply put, the performance is mostly good, but not perfect. We have some serious pain points here. You'll find that NES, Super Nintendo, the Game Boys, they all play exceptionally well. Even PS1 is remarkably solid, but the cracks start showing with N64 and above. Take a game like Mario Tennis 64, a very demanding game for N64 emulators with its advanced graphical effects and end-of-bout replays. This is a game that I can't even get working on my Mii U Flip, so even being able to play it on the ZPG is a feat in and of itself. The game will run at full speed, but slowdowns do occur at the end of a match when the replay is going on. And you've also got a few graphical glitches that crop up in other places as well. Other than that, everything else I played and tested was pretty solid and ran without issue. Star Fox 64, Mario Kart, F-Zero, Banjo-Kazooie, and Mario 64 all played as they were supposed to. Now, is there a game in the N64 library that won't play nice on this hardware? I'm nearly positive there is, but out of the mainstays I had to test, these all came out unscathed. Which cannot be said for Dreamcast. Now, I'm unsure of whether this hardware isn't capable enough for the Dreamcast or this emulator is to blame. Crazy Taxi is always my go-to for testing, but it suffers from heavy graphical glitches with the stock emulator settings. If I fool around with the rendering backend, then I can get more accurate graphics, but then the emulator crashes. The emulator can also get frozen for me just trying to exit a game. I think what happens is that if you leave a game without quitting it first, the emulator will try to store what you last did in memory, like an autosave, but it just ends up eating into RAM budget and then causing a big crash. But besides that instability, everything else I played worked just fine. Mach and X, KO the Kangaroo, Daytona, it's all solid. And this is the name of the game when it comes to older emulators like these. The hardware itself could be fine, but there's always these blind spots in the emulation. Next up was Sega Saturn, and it was an okay entry. I was a little surprised because I would have sworn that Saturn emulation was not this mature on early Android versions, but it seems I was mistaken. Sonic R is running like a champ. Not me though, because I'm terrible at this game. Switching over to something I'm not terrible at, Panzer Dragoon did not run well. It was super slow, running at approximately half the speed it normally should. A huge bummer, but hey, at least Dark Savior ran like a treat. Now, on to what I'd call the marquee platform. How does the PSP perform in this machine? I mean, after all, the ZPG proudly wears the Vita buttons as a sort of badge of honor. Surely the platform must be 100% solid, right? Right? Well, let's start with the good news first. I was expecting terrible performance from Vice City Stories. It's a pretty large game for the PSP, and it struggles on low-end hardware. But apparently not here. Now, it's not a locked 30, there's stream-related hitches when new parts of the map were asked to load in, but once it's in, the performance holds its own. It's the same for Battlefront. I'm not a fan of the limited controls, but performance is pretty remarkable. I remember going over a friend's house to play this game on PS2, so seeing a PSP port run this well is wonderful. A truly great sight. Which is more than I can say for Sonic Rivals. Slowdowns and graphical anomalies galore. It looks like a nuke went off in Forest Falls. Complete gamma blowout. This is an unacceptable result, but it seems like an emulator issue more so than a hardware one. But you do have games that are too much for the hardware, and the poster child for that is God of War Chains of Olympus. I mean, truth be told, I wasn't expecting this game to run well, and I can't say that I'm let down in that regard. It's always been a tough one for emulation, and our Snapdragon 800 isn't exactly a powerhouse. PSP not being a home run is overall disappointing. This is a form factor that this device seems like it was made for. I mean, Vita buttons! But in spite of the lackluster performance, I can forgive this more than I can modern devices. The ZPG was made by one guy with limited resources. What's the excuse for the larger retro handheld companies that put out devices that struggle with emulators they really shouldn't? So the question is, if there's more to this device than, a pretty shell, some nice buttons, and decent enough performance? Well, yeah, I'd say so. The Z Pocket game and its creator, Lao Zhang, are nothing short of pioneers. He saw a gap in the early retro handheld market and decided to tackle it head on, all while maintaining a focus on sustainability and feasibility. The respect I have for his dedication is immense. He crafted something truly special, not just in terms of the hardware, but in the vision behind it. In an era where companies are too often playing it safe and clinging to nostalgia, Lao Zhang brought something fresh and bold to the table. He didn't just aim for a pretty handheld, he solved real problems. This is the kind of energy the niche desperately needs. It's not enough to just repackage the past. We need devices that speak with confidence, that show their creators truly cared about every facet of the experience, from the construction to the OS. Even if most people haven't heard of Lao Zhang, anyone who holds the ZPG will quickly understand that this is a project born out of passion. It's evident in every button press, every menu interaction, and every emulator that runs, well enough. So yeah, while the ZPG may not wow you 6 years from its release, it's a device worth celebrating. Just like you're worth celebrating for making it this far into the video. Now, if you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of DIY handhelds, then please kindly do the YouTube things. I'm trying to get some more hardware in the studio right now, but my size makes that very difficult at times. At any rate, I'll see you all in the next video. I'm Silicon Fox, saying ciao.